finger. And last but not least, Curse Yehamehas. What's a Curse Yehameha, you may ask? Well, luckily for us, Chris has demonstrated in video.
Curse Yehamehá!
A month later, a similar situation played out at Target as the managers.
What the fuck? Hello, interns, employees, and what do you call your law?
Thieves.
Hello, thieves. You're right at home with us here. Oh, wow, you already said disappointed.
Well, alright, so for those that did not know, somehow Goddy, in your many decades of being a Sonic fan, has never heard about this.
I have not.
So, today, I'm showing Goddy the history of none other than Chris Chan.
That's the kid from Sonic X, right?
No,
I know about the kid from Sonic X. I
if
don't like.
only. If only.
Oh,
If only.
Jesus, it can't be that bad, surely.
Oh, you're gonna learn today.
Why does that sound like a threat?
It is.
Like, I know you said something about a SonicChu.
Oh, yeah, it's OC.
Is OC's a Sonic and a Pikachu?
Just watch this entire. Just watch the video.
Okay.
Alright, so.
Let's
We
go
are
again.
also in the video from, I believe, just so we can do credits and whatnot.
Oh yeah, here's the name. The name is Turkey Tom. This is a full documentary.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to check them out at Turkey Tom. YouTube.com/Turkey Tom. Give them a little shout out. There they go. I don't think they need it. They have
If you
like
want the
1
uninterrupted thing, watch them instead. We're just gonna be talking over it. And,
yeah,
you know.
we're gonna be talking over it. I'm gonna be reacting to it because I know absolutely nothing about Chris Chan.
Oh God.
All right, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Let us begin. Rah.
Hey, we'll try to cover the entire story of everyone's favorite or least favorite internet
Homie,
celebrity.
blink.
Chris Chan's story starts and ends with women, and with one in particular, his mother. Her allegedly abusive parenting being why he became the most documented individual in the world. And it was on account of his unspeakable acts toward her that he was suddenly pulled out of the public eye and into a jail cell. Seeing as he was just released from that jail cell, everyone's worried about what's next.
Just released? What?
It's natural to think history will repeat itself, but many still don't know the full extent of that history. A history which spans over 40 years, with its groundwork being laid even prior to that.
What?
It all started in the year of our Lord, 1980, when a
1980?
Bob Chandler and a 39-year-old Barbara Weston got married. Barb was involved with a few other men before Rob, such as a man named Ron Coleman Yeats Sr., who she had a child with by the name of Cole. Barb, however, disputes this and claims to have never been involved with Ray, but with a man named Jack Smithy, with whom she supposedly had a fancy wedding. In December of 92,
hold on, that was from the staff?
took Chris to a mall, where they would stumble across the Leonard Bernstein Symphony Orchestra, a band of animatronic bears. During their interaction with the leader of the band, Leonard Bernstein himself, the performer that operated the animatronics behind the scenes, accidentally called Chris Christian instead of Christopher, his birth name. For whatever reason, this deeply struck a chord with Chris, who insisted that his name be legally changed to Christian, a wish that would eventually be granted by his parents and even got coverage in a local newspaper. Later on, it seems Chris believed God himself was acting through that bear.
I am Christian Weston Chandler, so get it through your damn fucking skull and call me the real name that God has been given to me and the bear at Regency Square Shopping Center through 1989.
In 1990,
Homie, take your meds. What the fuck?
Already had for years at that point would grow to new degrees.
Really?
Entering the Sonic the Hedgehog watch and
that
win
wasn't a parody
contest where he won the grand prize, a $1,000 shopping spree at a local toy store. This win was reported on television, making yet another instance of Chris attracting the attention of the media, even as a young boy. By 1996, Barb would retire as well, meaning both her and Bob were spending the entirety of their time raising Chris, though whether their increased presence was good or bad for him, only time would tell. This was also the year Chris began high school. school, and in his opinion, these were his happiest years. It was during this period that he became the water boy for the basketball team, and just a year later,
He was the
was
water
manager
boy.
for it. However, I assume that if Chris was able to exercise that position, it must not have been that serious of a position in the first place. During one of his high school's basketball games, Chris unknowingly received a vision of the things to come. As he tells it, one day during b-ball practice, I was randomly thinking, with a picture of Mighty the Armadillo didn't see their advanced ages as a reason to avoid conceiving a child. Whether this was due to their lack of knowledge of the risks, carelessness, or a mixture of both is anyone's guess. By 1981, Barb was pregnant, and on February 24th, 1982, a child was born that would change the world forever. Christopher Weston Chandler. Unfortunately, whatever bad parenting techniques were present when Barbara was raising Cole were at least as bad, if not worse, when it came to raising Chris. By 1983,
so Cole's the brother?
Lack of interest in raising Chris herself, Barbara hired a babysitter that would end up abusing 1.5-year-old Chris by locking him in a closet. Later on, he would claim that this led to him having autism, although that claim is doubted. This situation caused him to become nonverbal,
I don't think you could.
only occasionally screeching and crying,
I don't think
which
that's
made
how
it
that
very
works.
difficult to deal with for his parents. By 1985, Chris met the first person besides his parents whom he recalls as a friend, Sarah Nicole Hammer. According to what he himself says in his Wikipedia autobiography, which, yes, exists, Sarah brought him out of his autistic shell and helped him become more social. Though she did, every once in a while, take advantage of Chris's less than advantaged intellect by doing things like locking him in a house's crawl space or trying to get him to put a honeysuckle in his mouth. But apart from that, Sarah was actually nice to him. They played hide and seek, rode swing sets,
apart from locking him up and putting something in his mouth. Yeah, okay.
A regular child. A couple of years later, Chris began kindergarten and Bob retired from his job. But normalcy was on borrowed time in the Chandler household. For starters, Chris discovered how to, as he puts it, mass debate in the ripe old age of 16 years old. After figuring out how to break the parental lock on his TV,
oh my god,
for himself, whatever that
he
means.
meant that?
In 1998, the Pokemon anime began being broadcasted, and Chris was immediately hooked, becoming a fan of the series.
I get it.
After, the Pokemon Red and Blue game would hit the shelves in America, and in a way, Christian's fate was sealed at that very moment. In the year 2000, Chris turned 18 and held a birthday party he eventually wrote about, saying, "We hung balloons and streamers, and we laid refreshments out on the table. At the door was 4 of my high school amigas, and one of them brought a friend. We ate pepperoni pizza and drank Pepsi. It was great.
Mexican or anything?
I was filling up with ecstasy. After
right, so he's
I was
just
presented with a big jawbreaker from
French,
an R.L. Stein novel from Sarah, a planner with stickers from Miranda, and a rabbit doll with jelly beans from Tiffany. We watched Good Burger and had fun. After they left, it was done. What did I wish for? I'm not telling. Though they obviously went to his party in the spirit of charitability, the fact that he was likable enough to inspire these girls to humor him is a sign that, despite his problems, Chris was functional, even if in his own way. In the same year, Chris began taking Paxil, a medication to help with his autism, and overall, it seemed like things were headed in the direction of stability. But who could ever predict what was coming next? Chris's interest in Pokemon endured, and he continued to create new Pokemon playing cards while having people from his school sign his site's guest book, complimenting his art. With all of the social rewards he was getting from expressing his
it's kind of cringe so far, but
belief in the potential of his creations grew. During a computer graphics
we were all
class,
cringe in
Chris
high
was
school.
assigned to create a CD
Nothing
album cover,
too
but with the caveat that the image could not include any copyrighted
big right now.
Because of his dependence on derivative material, he struggled with this limitation. That is, until he came up with a brilliant idea. If he were to make a hybrid of 2 copyrighted characters, the resulting admixture wouldn't be copyrighted, and thus, it had to be acceptable. The CD, dubbed Christian's Favorite Hits, would feature a picture of Chris himself alongside a few OCs of his.
Yeah, that's
with
cringe.
One unforeseen edition. The one and only
Does he
SonicChu,
believe he's Jesus?
A mixture of Sonic the Hedgehog and Pikachu. He commented on this moment, saying, "It dawned on me at that moment after lunch, much like the random creation of Bionic the Hedgehog during basketball practice in my freshman year, SonicChu just bursted right into my imagination. A blur at first, but then it became more clear and came together very well. So as swiftly as the creation of Bionic, I drew SonicChu on paper from imagination. Then I drew him on my currently open Photoshop program. After checking with my teacher and my father, who is big on copyrights and whatnot, SonicChu was legal then, and still is, and only mine. So, soon after, the CD cover was made, printed, and passed with an A+ grade. And just like that, things would never, ever
I'm
be
sure
the same.
Nintendo and Sega would still have an issue.
Chris would immediately start making homemade SonicChu merchandise as if he was a real character. One of the girls that went to his birthday birthday party, Kelly received a SonicChu sweater Chris had made. Though it's a virtual certainty, she had no idea what kind of psychotic horcrux she was dealing with at the time. Chris's creative streak would continue to manifest through another assignment he had to do, wherein he would have to document a week of his high school life, which he would dub A Week with Christian Chandler. The cover art is a picture of him wearing an Ash Ketchum hat with his dog, Patty. Above it is the title scribbled in Chris's incomprehensible handwriting, while underneath is the most menacing drawing of Sonic the Hedgehog ever made. This pattern of randomly drawing Sonic's head
That looks fucking terrible.
As in the first page of this assignment, we have this rendition of Sonic looking like he's been run over by a Japanese bullet train. As for the actual contents of Chris's paper, it details a pretty uneventful week, with Chris helping his parents move, sleeping during class, playing Pokemon, and reading R.L. Stein books. While most aspects of his life kept their monotonous rhythm, SonicChu festered in the deepest crevices of Christian's mind, taking on a myriad of different forms such as Dark SonicChu, Surfing SonicChu, and Snowboarding SonicChu. A man for all seasons. By June, Chris graduated from high school, though
he actually managed to graduate.
In his Wikipedia autobiography, he said, "Graduation for me was a sad one then. I only got recognized for my grades with a star pin, yet they had more fancier awards for more important qualities. I should have been highly recognized for my artistic talents I showed in many art classes for the award ceremonies before graduation day. I felt crestfallen greatly from not getting recognized for any of my talents. I excelled in math for the love of God. I had gotten over the award ceremony on the graduation day, but to add lemon juice to an open wound, it was dark and rainy that day, and they handed out more talented awards right before handing out any diplomas. When I went up there to get mine, I was feeling depressed, upset, crestfallen, and ticked off.
Did he really think he should get something for his art? His art looks fucking terrible.
And I did not shake anyone's hand. I just walked back.
I draw stick figures better.
Then, soon after, I just walked the wrong way up the center aisle, found an isolated table, and cried myself out. My mother found me later and comforted me. My father was so ashamed of the way I acted, and he would later still be angry at recalling the moment. Tiffany also found me and gave me a caring amount of condolences back there. I gave her a plush Psyduck as a graduating gift beforehand. But I left out two other reasons why I felt crestfallen at graduation. I never got the chance to ask Kelly out on a date, and more importantly, that I was leaving all my close gal friends behind, with nothing much happening besides him turning 20 and developing a nigh unexplainable seething hatred for Harry Potter, apparently because it became more popular than Pokemon around that time. In a card he made of himself called Dark Christian, where his Pokemon type is autistic, his ability is knocking out whoever says that they love Harry Potter more than they love Pokemon. The bottom of the card reads, "Christian says, kill Harry Potter, revive Pokemon." Early on in the year, his 21st birthday is ruined by his teacher, as he details. "My 21st should have been as nice as my 18th or Sweet 16, right? Wrong! I was attending an English class at PVCC with this old male teacher. I don't even remember the son of his name. Anyway, on February 24th, 2003, the day of my 21st birthday, he had the nerve to kick me out of his class just because of my doggone autism. If I could do it over, I'd give him a swift kick. But then I might have gotten kicked out of PVCC, and violence is rarely the answer anyway. Still though, he wrecked my turning 21. Angry face. The actual reason for him being kicked out of class is mostly unknown, with Chris sporadically saying the teacher randomly ejected him from the class because he was autistic. A more believable iteration of this story happens in one of Chris's retellings of it, where he mentions that the topic of homosexuality came up in a group discussion during class, and Chris, being the fancy gentleman we know him to be, said something offensive. Though we don't know what exactly it was, Chris expounded on it, saying, essentially, when it came to critiquing the papers of the other students, when they started talking about drug use and homosexual content, I wrote with exclamations you'd likely hear from a black person in church. He also emphasizes that the teacher had something to do with it, and how whatever problems he was having in English class,
he lives up to his name, huh?
He took the class with a female teacher. Chris also says without explanation that after
I can make that joke
he needed a
because
female sweetheart. This was the beginning of what would be known as
legally,
Chris's love
technically.
quest. Initially, not much changed in Chris's general behavior. He
In that religion, I guess? I don't know.
Gal pals, and of course, they all included SonicChu
I don't
in
practice.
some form because he genuinely thought it was charming. Being romantically inspired, he wrote the first SonicChu story called SonicChu and RosaChu, the genesis of the Love Hogs. Though this story was not illustrated, as the latter entries into the Chris Chan cinematic universe would be, it provided revelatory insight into the inner workings of SonicChu's canon. According to this sacred text, SonicChu came to be when Chris accidentally collided with a Pikachu that stood nearby as he fought a monster. Due to being charged with energy from the Chaos Emeralds, the Pikachu was permanently transformed into SonicChu. RoseChu, on the other hand, was a Raichu that happened to get hit with the rainbow that emitted from the creation of SonicChu. Eventually, for no reason other than Chris's tendency to insert everything from real life into his work, SonicChu and RoseChu kissed and became lovers. About a month later, as Chris resumed his community college classes for the 4th year, he came up with a brilliant idea to solve his problem. He posted up the very first attraction sign, which was a resume to attract a girlfriend. The sign read, 21 and single white male, shy, smart, young at heart, computer skilled, humorous, a great thinker and go-getter, natural salesperson, enjoys good parts of life, diplomatic, friendly, loves his family, peaceful, very creative.
That's cringe as fuck.
Seeking a cute 18 to 21 single
No,
female
the worst part is, though?
18
What?
to 21 years of age,
He's
does not already have a
genuine.
boyfriend, single,
He
average to
is?
slender weight / body
Yeah.
type, white, lives in Charlottesville,
So they are.
Bakersville area,
They-
does not smoke or drink
they-
alcohol,
They?
happy, positive
Oh, okay.
personality, average / high income, drives a
They-
vehicle. If
they're
any
they,
men
them?
read this huge sign, mind your own business. And to all
Okay.
men with
I don't know
girlfriends,
anymore.
except marrieds and blacks, go jump off a cliff.
What?
Have a nice day. You know, I would make
Sorry.
fun of the facts that he
I gotta go back. I missed that.
huge sign, mind your own business. And to all men with girlfriends, except marrieds and blacks, go jump off a cliff. Have a nice day. You know,
What the
I would
fuck?
make fun of the facts that he requires the girl to be average to slender, have income, and drive a vehicle, despite Chris himself possessing none of those things. However, my
Jesus.
standards have become so low due to the typical kind of person I cover in my videos that, honestly, I'm just glad he's looking for someone older than 18. Even lolcows used to have standards back then. They should strive to be more like Chris. Oh yeah, don't let me forget to mention that he also emblazoned this sign with some like white version of SonicChu, perhaps to signal how much importance he attributes to the girl being white. This month is also special because that's when Chris makes his debut as a recording artist, dropping his album Christian and the Hedgehog Boys. It's interesting
What?
to note that the cover includes Chris alongside Sonic and SonicChu in the foreground, while two black versions of Sonic, at least one of which is supposed to be Shadow the Hedgehog, are in the back, looking upset. The album boasts 8 tracks, all of which consist of Chris reciting
Wait, is he
parody lyrics
racist
over
to
actual
Shadow?
songs, not even instrumentals,
Don't
just
know.
full-on songs, ranging anywhere from Backstreet Boys to the Macarena. Seriously, just get a load of So Need a Cute Girl, Chris's rendition of the Backstreet Boys, I Want It That Way.
And I never wanna hear
Another track, Best Friends Forever, is subliminally dedicated to the aforementioned Sarah Hammer, who at this point
Jesus
had a
Christ,
boyfriend
I
whom
understand
Chris
why
was
people
jealous
don't like
of.
this
The
person.
lyrics are quite interesting. You hang out with your new friends you made and your boyfriend who acts as a black SonicChu. It is your choice to go with them instead of me. Soon you'll realize you're not complete because I'm not there. If it wasn't clear yet,
What?
SonicChu, along with pretty much every other character he made up, were either self-inserts or blatant wish fulfillment fantasies for Chris. Because of his utter inability to deal with the problems he was facing in his life, he articulated them through his OC. After a few months of his sign being posted up, without any takers as you'd expect, it was taken down by the dean of the college, Mary Lee Walsh. Chris had a few words to say about her. That evil witch, Mary Lee Walsh, mocked me and even crumbled my efforts and threw them into my face. It was serious, heart-shattering insults like that which literally shattered my heart to almost nothing and murdered my soul. Like, as if I didn't already understand that love can't be hurried, but they all left a huge impression among the general population that having a sweetheart was illegal in Virginia. Thus, Virginia is for virgins, not lovers. Despite Mary's best
What?
efforts, every time she took one of Chris's signs
I
down,
don't
he just
know.
made
I
more and
don't-
more of them and posted them up around campus, even creating MySpace and Facebook pages to advertise his pursuit of a boyfriend-free girl. As 2004 began, Chris began mulling over the idea of merging his writings with his drawings and making comic strips for his SonicChu stories. He also tries to negotiate with Mary Lee over emails, saying, "Mary, I've slept on it and I've realized that note hanging is not the way to get attention, and I don't really want to meet with either you nor Susan, no offense. I'll tell you what, let's forget the meeting, and if you will allow my newsletter to stay in distribution, I will do all of the following. I will never hang notes on the wall again, I'll consider stopping my silent treatment on Susan, I'll consider knocking you and Susan up my scale of respect each by 2 points. 0 equals no respect,
don't.
10 equals respect. By
How is he
newsletter,
not
this means SonicChu's
removed
newsflash,
from
which
that
he thought would
college?
more effectively attract girls by mesmerizing them with his artistic talent. Mary wisely chose to not engage with Chris's shenanigans, opting to just remind him of when his appointment was and leave it at that. At said meeting, despite Chris's Saul Goodman tier bargaining skills, he was forbidden from putting up signs as well as distributing his newsletter, which deeply embittered him, leading him to resent Mary and make her the primary villain of SonicChu's adventures
Are
from
you
then
fucking
on. In one
kidding
of
me?
the diary entries he would post to his no longer existent MySpace account,
Yeah.
Chris wrote, Mary Lee Walsh made it illegal to distribute the
you
news dash. I am very angry at that. In response, I plan to incite the masses and hope they demand the return of the news dash so my chances on getting a girlfriend can be restored. I've also declared war on them as well. About a month later, he added that Mary Lee was trying to get him kicked out of college altogether for his stunts, though it's unknown the degree to which that's true, as Chris is a very unreliable narrator. I've just had my worst trip to the mall. I was working with my heart on a red string of fate when from out of the blue, a jerk cop shattered my heart and ripped up the red string. I am very mad and upset because that jerk took my idea for a fall, just like that expletive at PVCC did. Before I read on, I have to make a note here to explain that the red string of fate Chris mentions is referring to a heart made out of paper that he would throw at girls at the mall, in the hopes they held onto it so that he could reel them in.
No wonder you're assaulting women with random bits of paper, you asshole.
Anyway, Chris continues, I was not bothering anyone at the mall today while I was just trying to sell myself when I got arrested for trying. I fortunately did not go to jail, but I've been stripped of my right to go to the mall by myself. I would be required to bring my mom or dad with me. My independence and my soul were practically murdered. This encounter inspired him to create one of his most famous terms, jerk-ops, a portmanteau of jerk and cops. From then on, whenever something bad happened to him, Chris would find a way to blame it on the jerk-cops. He even made a Pokemon card for them, with the description reading, This copper fiend wants to shatter the virgin's heart by destroying his tools for attracting a boyfriend-free woman. Within a week of his arrest, and possibly because of it, Chris gets suspended from his college,
no wonder
saying,
people shit on Sonic fans. I'm
PVCC
sorry. People like that are begging your fandom. This is why.
My dad is bloodthirsty for revenge as well. He's going to write to U.S. President George W. Bush Jr. and Laura Bush to help me get allowed back to PVCC. We all curse death upon Mary Lee Walsh. After this, both his diary entries and his attempts at the love quest die down for the time being, most likely due to his parents telling him to cut back on it to avoid getting in even more
in today's
trouble.
world,
In the
he would
meantime,
get
Chris
arrested
was
for those
mandated
death
to consult
threats.
a psychiatrist for an evaluation as a result of his community college's board. It has a few noteworthy excerpts, such as, according to his parents, there have been a number of incidents which led to his suspension. They feel strongly that the suspension was unwarranted and did not take into account the patient's developmental limitations. One such occurrence was during an interaction with African-American
I can't believe I'm actually speechless for
were questioning the patient regarding his search for a girlfriend, at which point he told them they could not be his girlfriend because they were not white. This was perceived as racially insensitive, although from the patient's perspective, he was merely pointing out that they did not meet his standard criteria for a female companion. To the surprise of many, the psychiatrist considered Chris to be dealing with his autism in a relatively healthy way, despite the occasional mischief he got up to. One interesting point that has been brought up as a consequence of this document is the fact that both the Love Quest and SonicChu, Chris's two most destructive obsessions by far, only began manifesting after Chris began taking Paxil in 2000. Though I'm no specialist on the matter, some have said that Chris should not have been put on an antidepressant. Someone, I can't remember who, suggested that the next time he looked in, we wave at him. Whoever suggested it should die, unless it was me, in which case I feel I've received enough punishment. Of course, he looked in and we all waved at him. He looked kind of bewildered and sort of scared at first, but quickly caught on and waved back. So we went about our business, doing floor set and junks, and a little while later he came in. I was kind of apprehensive about this. I mean, I've been doing floor set all day and I didn't really feel up to dealing with another crazy, but he came right up to the counter I was standing behind, and he looks right at me, all fidgety and twitchy, and this conversation ensued. Chris, you look to be about 19 years old, right? I busted out laughing because he guessed it right. That's exactly right. See, I know these things. I can just tell how old someone is. He said,
oh, that's not creepy.
My name is Christian, but you can call me Chris. I'm Christian W. Chandler. Oh, hi, Chris. So, do angels have names? I found out later that he meant to say, do angels like
hello,
you have names? Poor guy was so nervous he didn't get it right. Probably, but I don't know. Well, what's your name? Sorry, I don't go for pickup lines, I replied, kind of laughing. His face kind of fell, and I felt sorry for him, but he pressed on. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to insult you. I was just asking your name. So what is your name? My name is Anna. Okay, well, Anna, is there any way I could, get your phone number and maybe I could give you a call sometime? No. Well, do you want my phone number then? You can call me on my cell phone. No thanks. So, do you have a boyfriend, Anna? No, I'm not looking for one, though. Alright, well, do you have access to the internet? Yes. Okay, hold on one second, I'll be right back. I nodded, and he went back to his spot where he kept his 2 tote bags and his Sam's Club cup. So, Christian came back and handed me a card with a crudely drawn Sonic the Hedgehog and some other yellow Sonic-looking creature on it, along with Christian's name, email address, and website.
What
it was a
the
homemade
fuck?
business card. That's my email address, and you can just email me sometime, okay? Okay, I said, not intending to email him at all. Despite how awkward these exchanges self-evidently were, you gotta give it up for Chris's autistic Riz, even if just a little bit. For a guy
No.
with as many setbacks as him, he handled the situation with more
No,
dignity than
not
expected.
autistic Riz.
Many guys
I've seen
today are afraid
autistic
to
Riz.
even
That is
approach
not
a girl.
autistic
On March
Riz.
24th, he released one of the earliest proper comic book productions, SonicChu Adventure Sub-Episode 1, dubbed Jerkop-tastrophe. Despite being called SonicChu Adventure, it's mostly just about Chris himself, retelling the story about being banned from the mall. On March 29th, an update to his love quest is posted to his diary. Will, at the mall today...
So as cringy as this is, I don't see why he's famous.
Again. I went to the mall like normal. I picked up some chicken nuggets.
This
and
is not why
then
he's
I went to my
popular.
spot.
It
I pulled
isn't?
up a chair to sit and eat my
Nope.
food. Then from out of the blue, this cute girl approached me, and she asked me if I was looking for a girlfriend. Her name was Hannah, and she was 18 years old. I said
Oh,
yes, and we small
Jesus.
talked for
Why
a
did
bit.
he make her
Then
younger?
She invited me over to Starbucks for coffee. After she left, I became very excited, and oh my god, all over. After calling mom and eating my nuggets, I lifted the chair with such sheer and grace, and spun around
After
with it like
calling
a
mom
hamster,
and eating my
and put it
nuggets.
back where it was. I felt that my love quest had
At least you
finally
didn't
come
say
to
nuggies.
an end, and I so elated that my shattered
You know
heart
what?
had
It would have
full
been
fast
less
recovery.
cringe if he
I
said
went to
nuggies.
Starbucks and we talked about basic things. I showed her my SonicChu scrapbook. She was very impressed. I gave her my email.
Like,
and both my
guys,
phone
okay, I'll
numbers
tell
on
you
a
now,
SonicChu site card, and she gave
we
me her
are
email
cringe,
address.
right?
I was very attentive as I took notes
I am
about
not-
her and
We are
maintained eye
free.
contact.
We
As
are
I left
cringe
her,
and we are
I gave
free,
it
right?
a double take flirt. That
I'm
was
not
a
saying
rise. Now, here comes the
anything
fall. As I was
about
sitting in my
that,
spot,
right?
thinking about future steps for later dates, Anna and Dana told me that when they talked
But,
to
like,
Hannah, she told
we
them
know
she was
we're
setting me up in
cringe.
a prank.
We're-
I could
we
not
do
believe
cringe
it,
on
so I found and
purpose.
asked
That's what
Hannah.
we are.
Sadly, it was true.
It
In
makes
major
people
shock,
laugh, yeah.
Anna and
It
Dana
makes
told me
people
that when
laugh.
they
We've been
talked to
told it
Hannah,
makes
she
people
told
laugh.
them that she was setting me up in a prank.
But
I
this
could
is
not believe
cringe,
it, so I found
cringe.
and asked Hannah. Sadly, it
Like,
was
even
true.
we
And in
notice this
major
is
shock,
cringe.
my heart shattered again by 85%, and I let out a big no. As Love Quest sinks to new lows, Chris gets kicked out from the local McDonald's, where he's
Jesus.
also been conducting his attraction sign experiments. I'll spare you from hearing the diary entry in its full extent, but the Managerks, Chris's nickname for the managers,
Oh my
started
God.
calling the cops on Chris for loitering in their establishment. In later SonicChu episodes, the manager received in-universe stand-ins. One of them was named Married Senor Comic, an alias which is completely unexplainable to anyone with a functioning brain, and for no apparent reason, had robot arms and legs. After Married Senor, Chris's creativity must have run out, since the other one was just succinctly referred to as Black Fat Jerk, on account of the fact that,
Jesus.
to Chris, that's all he really was. If his diary entry is anything to go by, Chris began explaining his situation to them in song and dance. When one of the managers asked Chris to just have a normal conversation with him, he sat silent for a minute until he came up with possibly the most schizophrenic own ever uttered. I do not speak to any man other than myself, because they have all taken the pretty girls, leaving me with none. What a wordsmith.
What the
He
fuck?
followed this up by giving them verbal punishment, the again arrested for following too close while driving. And yes, at this point he was a licensed driver, if you can believe it.
How the
After his
fuck did
suspension
he
from
pass a
college was
driving
lifted and he
test?
started regularly interacting with other people his age again,
I have no
things
idea.
relaxed a bit for a while as advances were made in the love quest. After bidding goodbye to Anna, who moved to Utah.
By the way,
Chris
guys,
makes
this
a
is
few
not
more
against
attempts at finding
anyone
a
with
date over
autism.
MySpace messages, mostly
I
to
will-
no avail.
As we
The
both
first
have
one
him.
was Jelena,
Yes.
who turned him down
That's-
because he seemed too desperate. Then came Lindsay, who consistently rescheduled her dates over the course of 2 months in order to never actually have to
That
see
creator
Chris
did
in
not
real
get the
life.
help they needed.
Overall,
That's
things
all
seemed
I'll say.
dire for our brave hero. But it was
Uh,
around
he
this
clearly
time that he
needed a
began to
lot of
rouse
it.
online attention, with a thread on a Sega forum centered around SonicChu popping up. Earlier that year, YouTube was created, so the golden age of
Oh,
Christian was
God.
at the gates.
Oh, plus
Meanwhile,
SonicChu
he was
6
getting
is
some
coming
traction in
soon.
his emails. Though his application to become a official
Mhm.
Nintendo game tester was rejected, Chris got into regular correspondence with a girl named Megan. On the 1st of November, Megan emailed Chris asking him to buy an episode of Tintin on eBay for her. They had already met in person before in a video game convention a year
Tintin?
prior,
Why?
but it wasn't until these emails at the tail end of 2005 that Chris grew obsessed with her. Though she clarified from the get-go that she wasn't interested in Chris, or anyone for that matter, in a romantic way, this didn't deter Chris, who clearly saw her as a love interest and continued to invite her on
Jesus
dates.
Christ,
To date,
homie
Megan
is
was probably the
cringe.
person who had been the nicest and most patient with Chris. 2006 marked a significant rise in Chris buying the most random, useless garbage from eBay, from My Little Pony and Sailor Moon paraphernalia to German World War II photos. Apparently, all of the purchases
So
were
he was a
influenced by
brony
Megan's
too?
interests. Based on their emails, we know that Megan was into MLP, Sailor Moon, and
Oh,
for
no,
some
she was.
mysterious reason, Wehrmacht soldiers from World War II.
the
Considering
fuck?
how desperate Chris was to get a girlfriend, it's
Oh.
surprising he didn't start LARPing as a novelty to impress her. Eventually,
my
he got her a
God.
Nintendo DS, which she turned down due to the fact that she already had one she bought herself. While Chris was busy spinning his wheels into the mud during
Why
his
would you
love
not take a
quest by
free
chasing
other
after
one?
an uninterested Megan, he managed to graduate from
Back in the
community
day.
college. getting a degree in computer-aided
So?
drafting and design. Over time, Chris began wearing her down, continually being pushy about wanting to date her despite her repeatedly saying she wasn't interested. Most likely because of this, Megan severely limited the amount of times they met up in real life to once a week, and even then, Chris would take that as an opportunity to be as handsy as possible, which she obviously wasn't okay with. After months of this dynamic going back and forth, Chris overstepped a few boundaries when he started complaining about Megan being friendly with other guys. This was grating for her since not only were they not dating, but she was also not interested in the guys Chris was paranoid about. This caused her to email him in a slightly stricter tone, saying, "I don't want to have to tell you again or I might get really angry, because you know unwanted remarks or advances to a girl is sexual harassment, and I don't take that lightly, okay?
Yeah,
So can you understand
good for
that?"
her.
Anyway, sometimes I get the feeling that you copy me to get me to like you. Like Sailor Moon, for example. The only Sailor Moon thing you had was that adult video, and since I told you how much I love it, then you start getting into it. Kind of like My Little Pony. That kind of thing really annoys me.
You mean the 14-year-old girl?
Oh no!
Oh, what the fuck? And before anyone says, well, it's anime, shut the fuck up. He was 20-something. He knew better. He knew better. Okay?
Well, then again, it's also the internet. It's the internet.
I know it's
Right?
the internet, right? But like, still.
Like before you. This is like before internet was well known. So how on earth did?
That means it was hand-drawn porn.
Or it's like live action.
Maybe. It probably was actually. Then it was okay. That's fine.
Me. You make it sound like I have to get your approval to be that kind of friendly to someone, and I felt rather disappointed about those remarks. And you already know I don't love you, so why do you make yourself unhappy by holding grudges and trying so hard to win me over? So please, if you really want to make me happy, please let me make my own decisions and figure out my own life, okay? Besides, even if I had a boyfriend, what makes you think I'll stop being friends with you? I'm not that kind of person who'd say, well, I have a boyfriend now, so see ya. No, I'm not that kind of bitchy girl. You know I haven't talked to this person in a year. I'm not really wanting to get together with him either. Boyfriends aren't for me. Don't want him, don't need him. However, I can't say I like how much you call him a lucky jerk. Why is he a jerk? Why do you call all guys that? Because they take all the pretty girls, leaving you none to choose from? Hate to be blunt, but that's a pathetic way to think. You don't go to a mall and buy a girlfriend. The thing is, guys didn't take all the girls. The girls just didn't choose you. Quit blaming other men. Personally, I think you shouldn't be so picky about what they look like. All you say is you want a pretty girl. Well, it's the inside that counts. After all, a pretty girl can have the personality of Satan. Meanwhile, an ugly girl may have a heart of gold, but you wouldn't even give a second look,
I like
would
this
you?
girl.
I often wonder, if I was an ugly girl, you wouldn't even come near me, would
Asshole
you?
has good
Little
art
did
too.
poor Megan know that the powers of the Chaos Emeralds render Chris impervious to reality checks of any
Oh.
nature. While this drama ensued, Chris never
That's
stopped cranking out
amazing.
new issues of SonicChu, all containing the same theme
Oh.
recycled over and over again. Such
Alright,
as
here's
SonicChu's
I
person
have
again.
the-
They're great.
I
This
have the-
person's great.
I have the power of anime and Christianity on my side.
Continuously
Chemical
black.
X?
The text
No,
bubbles being
Cherry
randomly
color.
placed on the page with no discernible reading
Oh,
order.
God,
Chris
he's a Yu-Gi-Oh
vicariously
fan, too.
defeating his real-life opponents such as Mary Lee Walsh and the guy who Sarah Hammer dated instead of him, so on and so forth. What was noticeable in the later episodes was that, progressively, SonicChu became a secondary character in his own comic, with the protagonist becoming Chris himself. SonicChu's function was primarily to serve and protect Chris, and every once in a while,
Oh my God,
symbolically
he
represent
became
who he wanted
Chris
to be.
before Chris
Additionally, other
existed.
than real-life people, Chris also added a character called Crystal Weston Chandler, a female version of himself that seems to simultaneously fulfill the ideal role of the mom, the ideal daughter, the ideal sister, and the ideal girlfriend. The fact that this guy wasn't regularly seeing a therapist is a travesty, to be honest. As Megan put a healthy amount of distance between herself and Chris, his eBay purchases started drifting towards the salacious. Items include Bootylicious Love Doll, Pearl Beaded Prolong Ring, Nina Hartley's Guide to Sex Toys, and my personal favorite, Space Nuts. After years of frustration, Chris began taking matters into his own hands, and
What the
following
fuck?
this general theme, he also decided to give up on Santa, since for the past 3 years, he was asking for a girlfriend which Santa never delivered. 2007 begins, and Chris begins working on a new project.
Wait, wasn't
called
Chris,
Yep,
like,
I'm on
his
TV.
mid-20s?
This consists of videos he had recorded
Yeah.
on VHS tapes burned onto a DVD.
Give up
Of
on
course,
Santa.
he
I
had
know
no
he's
idea
autistic,
how
but what the
valuable an
fuck?
archive of his activities would eventually become, and most likely he just did this out of his narcissistic
So have I. I stopped
self-obsession
believing in
without
Santa at
knowing
like
of
the
his
age of
life.
10.
Later on, the leaking of this DVD was of great assistance to those interested in the CWC lore. But at the very end of this highlight reel about Chris's life, there was one video filmed solely for
See,
the
technically,
purposes of
I
being put into
forgot,
the DVD
like,
called Christian
not
Weston
reading
Chandler's
it
Future
earlier
Message.
than that. I
Yeah.
was like, if I just
Hello,
pretend
ladies
like I
and
still
gentlemen,
do, I
girls
can
and
get
boys,
Chris.
and dudes of all teenages.
In this 9-minute
I
long
mean, my
prophetic
family
manifesto, Chris summarizes the
still
lessons he
pretends
learned
to
up until
believe
this
in it
point.
because
He
my
did
sister,
this because, ideally, he
you
wanted
know.
this video to be played in schools. In it, he goes on about
But,
why going
like,
to school isn't torture, why drinking and smoking
I
are
ain't
bad,
making
the
a
extreme
list.
importance
Oh,
of
yeah, I
staying
ain't making
straight, and last but not least, that girls should
I mean,
consider
for sure,
dating
checking
ugly
twice.
guys because they will have a better personality and a brighter future. It's around this
There's
time
one
that
kind of
Chris
list that
reconnects
Chris
with
should be
Cole,
on.
his previously mentioned half-brother, to offer him a copy of
Fucking
his
watch list for all
autobiographical
these
DVD.
girls,
For the
Jesus.
first half of the year, it's business as usual for Chris, who continues to exchange emails with Megan, where she continually complains about him touching her when she doesn't want him to. By June, she leaves for Kentucky, and Chris misses her dearly since she was pretty much the only female he could get close to that wasn't his mom. This wasn't the only thing causing him to be upset, though, as by the end of June,
Chris's
dog
mom.
Patty, that he had had since
No,
1988, had to be put
no.
down.
What?
He even wrote his dog a
No.
eulogy, saying, "When
Oh,
Patty
okay.
was brought to the vet on that faithful day, I was
Weird.
distraught with fright and concern for her health. I stayed with her during her final moments with my hand on her head and a tear in my eye. When my
Aw.
mother was brought the paper that gave the doctor
That's
permission to
sad.
send her on her way, I didn't want her to be the one to sign it. I raised Patty since she was a 6-week-old pup, and I wanted to take the strain for signing the one-way ticket. It was hard for me, but it was for the best. So I signed that paper with a crying SonicChu face saying, 'We love you,
Fuck
Patty.'
off.
After that, I gave her my final pets, hug, hand to paw hold, eye contact, ear rub, cheek to fur rub, and I sadly waved her for the final time, and I said, 'Goodbye, Patty. I love you.' As I stood outside, I heard Patty's last bark saying, 'I will always love you, Chris. Thank you.' Regardless of how thorny and problematic of an individual Chris Chan is, losing a pet you've had for that long
Yeah, no one
is
deserves
tough,
to lose a
especially
pet. No,
considering
this
how
stuff.
few and far between were his
The
sources of
SonicChu
affection.
shit
Patty
was
must have meant a
cringe.
lot for him, and it's hard not to feel for the guy. But let's not dwell on this for too long because Chris did not either. By July, Christian had entered a contest called Chop Chop Master Onion's Rap Showdown, which was created to promote the Parappa the Rapper game that was coming out that year. The grand prize was 2 PSPs and an all-expenses-paid trip to Seattle for the 2007 Penny Arcade Expo, which Chris was hoping to use in order to seduce Megan out of Kentucky and back into his arms.
The
Well,
fuck?
not quite back since she was never there. Anyway, this is Chris's entry if you were curious.
AP Station. My name is Christian Chandler. I live in Bucksville, Virginia. I have a PSP. I like to rap. I play with the rapper. I go with you now. The only song I know is Master Onion.
July was also a very active month for his eBay, and he
That was
bought
cringe.
plenty of more sex dolls, adult videos, and masturbation aids of all kinds. Mind you, all of these trinkets, gizmos, and gadgets were bought on the credit card of a nearly 80-year-old Bob. Whenever he wasn't getting busy with those, he was emailing every person he'd ever interacted with in his life to vote for his Parappa the Rapper contest entry so that he'd win the prize. He even tried Cole, but to no avail, since he seemed to be interested exclusively in trashing Chris's parents. This technique must have proved effective since his video made it to the final rounds, but in early August, it was made public that the winner of the contest was not Chris, but a guy named Adam Stackhouse. Chris would put in his 2 cents about this unfavorable result. That stupid, no good Adam Stackhouse won the trip. He had music and more than one person in his video, which were in violation of the official rules.
Oh
3
my
other videos
God.
out of the remaining 9, Apralewski, Brutal, and
Mr.
Story of
Plickle,
Buckhead all
get
violated the
him
official rules as well. Those 7 people of those 4 videos should have been disqualified. Period. I am so angry of the fact that the PlayStation Company and their promotional associates will not do anything to bring these violators to justice. Sworn on my autism, justice will be served to these 7 people of those 4 videos.
Sworn
Of
on
course,
my
while accusing other
autism.
people of cheating, Chris overlooked the fact that he himself had made over 120 fake accounts to vote for himself, as he admitted in an email to Megan. Also, his claims that Adam's video had music are based on the facts that Adam beatboxed, which hardly qualifies. In any event, his tirades continued over at his PSN blog. This is directed mostly to Adam Stackhouse, the SOB who was the alphabetically first video in the Parappa contest and got wrongfully the big prize. I loathe Adam and his sister for stealing my
Oh,
one
man.
chance at taking my sweet gal friend to Seattle. It would have been terrific. I might have even been able to change her outlook on not planning on having children. She and I are both virgins, although I am a frustrated, high-functionally autistic 25-year-old virgin. I don't have much going on for me, really, because I have been the dog in America's favorite game, Kick the Autistic, for my whole life. I curse those 7 people, between the cast of the 3 illegal videos, to die and burn. As for Adam, if he's reading this and is asking, "You've got something to say to me?" I do. P.S. Fuck you, you dream-smashing son of a bitch. One thing I've neglected to mention is
the
that while
fuck?
Megan was away in Kentucky, she wasn't checking her emails, so she had no idea what kind of garbage Chris was filling her inbox with. When she returned and saw what he had been up to, she once again tried her very best to shut Chris down. I just want to say that your behavior has irritated me for the last time. First, I'll start off with saying that I'm glad you didn't win the contest, because I have no interest in going on a trip alone with someone who can't keep his hands off me. I'm not your girlfriend and I never will be. When I say, don't touch me, that means don't touch me. What may seem friendly to you is sexual harassment to me. You whine that you're just being friendly, me, but you obviously have no consideration for my feelings. Also, I can't say I like how you use my photo in your video and on the cover of your comic book. I want them removed from the internet immediately. Since I'm not a MySpace member, I can't view what you post. If there are any photos of me on your blog, I want them removed. And I don't like your Megan obsession. I don't like being a character in your comics. I don't like how you made me a character in Soul Calibur and Animal Crossing. That kind of behavior really freaks me out. With all that said, we're down to two options. A, we remain friends and only friends, period. As in no more touching me, following me, asking me personal questions, and giving me things. We can still battle and trade cards and talk. Or B, never see me again. I'm sorry it's come down to this, but I've told you repeatedly in a nice way to stop, but you've never listened.
What? You should have just told him to fuck off. I'll be real.
Serious consideration, and now know that if you try your advances again, I won't be very nice about it. Despite how clear Megan was being, it would once again fall on mostly deaf ears, as Chris would reply with another email titled, "Ouch, my heart," trying his hardest to guilt trip and yakking about his love quest once again, concluding it with a declaration of his love for her. A couple of weeks go by and Chris continues sending her love mail, all while purchasing more and more sex dolls. Eventually, it seems he did take what Megan said to heart and complied with her demands, and she thanks him for it. The peace treaty between them didn't last very long after Chris began expressing his distaste for one of Megan's friends who happened to be gay. After being confronted by Megan,
so he's a homophobe too?
Originally, I was not fond of him because it was obvious that he was a homo. Yes, I am a homophobe. I fear them all, and I fear the tormenting temptations of falling off the straight path. But then I mentally, sometimes from a DVD, and if you'll pardon the expression, shove some pussy in my face. I'll tell you what, if I ever stoop down to changing my path, I might as well would get a gender change operation. What a prophetic statement from Mr. Chandler. By some miracle, Megan is once again tolerant and patient with him, saying she understands why he's like this, and she also had a tough time in high school and felt very lonely.
Him having a sex change would be the only pussy he'd ever get.
Story was revealed, as for the very first time, an online community took note of his existence. On a thread about you on the website Something Awful, Chris gets brought up, along with his SonicChu comics. Soon, he gets his own dedicated thread titled "SonicChu and His Quest for a Boyfriend."
Am I wrong now?
After 2 decades of people either pitying or distancing themselves from him due to his eccentric sensibilities, Chris finally finds his niche, a target audience of people who relish in how strange and demented he is. In the thread, people point out how his website looks like a visual rendition of a grand mal seizure. Some even theorize that there was no way everything CWC made was this naturally awful, and that he must have been doing it on purpose as a really elaborate prank or performance art piece. But a handful of the users actually had experienced Chris in person. One user said, "I posted in the other thread, but I've seen this guy in real life. This is no prank. He used to go to the college I attended until he got kicked out. If anyone here is from Charlottesville, Virginia, you may have seen him also. He hangs around the UVA Alderman Library and the Fashion Square Mall. I had seen him around campus and just thought he was in an anime club or something. I never saw him with his signs. I learned a lot more about him when he messaged my sister on MySpace and invited her out for a soda. She declined and he became increasingly more harassive towards her until she blocked him. Yes, he wears that SonicChu necklace around everywhere he goes." People slowly realized that Chris was definitely not your run-of-the-mill internet weirdo. Not only was it evident he was a special kind of... well, special, but no one up until that point had probed the depths of the Quickie-verse. Despite how small of a community there was around Chris and SonicChu at the time, it was like stumbling into King Tut's tomb and finding mountains of archaeological artifacts that had been hidden away from the world for centuries. The same user from the previous post found and shared an updated and enhanced version of the attraction sign on Chris's website. This edition included a list of Chris's turnoffs, which are the following. Smokers, real drunk alcoholics, gone to Moe's often, current/previous mothers. I support them fully, but I would not feel comfortable walking into a previously made family. I would feel more comfortable starting fresh and having my own children. Real ugly women, currently over 230 pounds, the low functionally mentally handicapped, the seriously physically deformed, autistic, high functional or otherwise. Although I myself am high functionally autistic, but that's besides the point. Medium or dark chocolate, police women. What stands out, firstly, is the amount of hypocrisy in this list. Not only do we exclude the ugly,
did we just hear that right?
Besides the point. Medium or dark chocolate, police women. What stands out, firstly, is the amount of hypocrisy in this list. Not only does he exclude the ugly, fat, and autistic, all of them being categories many would group him in with, but he says police women are a turnoff when, at this point, he had bought a total of 3 cop-themed blow-up dolls. He also mentions that mothers are a turnoff, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I'll save that wretched can of worms for later.
Did he fuck a mother?
In the dark underbelly of the internet, news travels at light speed, and just a little after CWC's debut as a lolcow in the Something Awful forums, discussions about him sprung up in the the cartoon and video game boards on 4chan. Unfortunately, because these were from so long ago
wait for
that
you,
4chan didn't
fiends.
have the reputation it currently has, and consequently, almost nobody archived what went on, we don't have all of this chatter saved. Regardless, we can imagine the kind of discussions that were going on. A few days after the word of Chris Chan had been spread around, someone named Evan from the cartoons board emailed Chris saying, "This is some fan art of SonicChu my friends and I have drawn.
Oh, dear
Hope
God.
you enjoy it." One of the attached images seemed to be a GIF that depicted Chris in a staring match with a Sonic-like figure, and that was the only attachment that wasn't a veiled troll. The first one was a drawing of Chris in his love quest with a sign that said, "No darkies," while the other two were unaffected renditions of Chris and SonicChu doing unspeakable acts. Because of his infinite naivete, Chris replied, saying, "Thank you for your fan art contributions. In constructive criticism, I like the one with me in the girlfriend auditions, as well as my glaring in the eyes of the blue guy. But I am feeling great to test towards the other two. SonicChu and I are not of that nature at all. If you would like to make it up to me, though, please draw a strip of SonicChu stripping for SonicChu, and have him fuck her, and draw SonicChu masturbating and squirting." Emphasis added. "I am straight, damn it. I will not be veered in any other disgustingly grotesque direction. Again, most nasty fan arts are not appreciated at all. Please feel free to share that quote with the rest of the
What
fans.
the fuck?
Sincerely, Christian Weston Chandler." Attached was an image of Chris and SonicChu staring menacingly, subtitled by the phrase, "We're keeping track." It's bad enough that Chris likes the no darkies image, but the SonicChu hentai request signals a major shift that Chris was undergoing at this time, from oddball virgin to corrupt pervert. Evan obeyed his wish, but with a twist. Much to Chris's surprise and chagrin, SonicChu was depicted as having a giant penis. Chris replied, "Do me a favor, draw a vagina on SonicChu. SonicChu is a girl. She never had a freaking pickle. If I see one more freaking pickle, and you may spread this quote to other adult fan artists, I will create you in Soul Calibur 3 and beat you up like there's no tomorrow." To which Evan responded with a simple "uh-oh," along with another MS Paint drawing of SonicChu holding a pickle, this time literally and not figuratively. This trolling conflagration hit its peak when an article about Chris went up on Encyclopedia Dramatica. After being informed about it by two people who seemed to genuinely care, Chris claimed that the article caused him to have the worst weekend of his life.
Are you kidding
saying
me?
A hacking terrorist group, Anonymous, and 4chan are somehow involved in that page. When the article itself mostly went over the things we've already covered, it did so in the typical ED fashion, rife with insulting expletives directed at Chris and his creations. Along with it came a few people trolling on his email, but no one really got to him besides Evan, probably because Chris's attention was directed elsewhere. All of this obviously upset him, and a couple of days later, he expressed his disapproval of the ED page in an uncharacteristically polite and genuine way that it's hard not to sympathize with him. In the video titled Chris Chan's Public Announcement, he simply asked that the page be rewritten in a more favorable light, suggesting edits such as including his family history. According to his headcanon, he was a descendant of Anne Boleyn on his mother's part,
Are you
despite
fucking
the fact that
kidding me?
Anne Boleyn never had any children. Additionally, he claims to be 1/16th Cherokee through his father, saying, "We're a respected tribe." After apologizing for anything he could have possibly done that wasn't nice, he asks that the page be taken down. Much later, Chris relayed on emails that during this time, he and his mother were badgering the management of the game place for CCTV footage to try and figure out who took that picture of him that was featured on the ED article, which they deduced must be the same person who wrote it. However, they stopped once the owner of the place threatened to ban him for a month. It's really funny how Chris isn't afraid of being arrested by actual cops like he was at Target, but if someone merely suggests taking away his ability to play Pokemon cards
You can't
with
get the
preteens for a
Pokemon
single
cards.
month, he folds just like that. On November 10th, an image
I
of
guarantee
Goku
you
was
he'd be a
added to the
Pokemon
article's
card
gallery of images
scalper
above the
too, by the
caption,
way.
"The true brains behind Chris Chan," and this was the straw that broke the camel's back. That set him off to make an account and try to edit it into a positive light himself. Emphasis on the word try because it seems not even Christian is capable of making himself look better. He removes goatsy along with words like retarded and scary because he doesn't like them. In the section about Evan's trolling, he replaces the phrase masturbation and squirtin' with just masturbate, and added a couple of notes that said every person is doing it and relief, with a smiley face next to it. In an attempt to defend himself from the accusations that he was racist, Chris edited in the following section. He's also old-fashioned in his idea of a sweetheart. She is not black. He is cool with adoption, but his dream of his future daughter calls for blood, tears, and sentinel descent. His verbal acumen
Why does that
never
sound very
ceases to amaze
incesty
me.
when he said
In
daughter?
regards to the mockery of his attraction sign, he put in the only reasonable and inexpensive idea he could ever fucking think of. There was also some clarification about the medallion, which people were speculating was made of clay, but Chris specifically said it was made of Crayola model magic. This was just the first day's worth of edits. It was a day later, on November 12th, that Chris made the brunt of his most notable edits, such as commenting on his Officer Nasty doll, saying, "Nah, it's just my artificial woman in her plastic blue outfit. Awesome to and the cleaning maintenance is simple. She'll only last until she has her internal injury." Among these discretionary, even humorous additions, he also makes possibly one of the worst mistakes of his life. For absolutely no comprehensible reason, he makes multiple additions to the gallery, all consisting of hand-drawn SonicChu hentai, with the exception of 2 images. The first is titled MaryWantsIt.jpg, a nude Mary Walsh on her evil throne, beckoning with her finger and saying, "Come and lick my pussy, my jerk-off slave." What the fuck? If you can believe it, that wasn't what got him in trouble. But the next image. The infamous Shame Came for Quickie.jpg, which featured Chris with a smirk, a naked female with one hand and doing a thumbs up in the other, captioned with, "Your sister has come for me." Though obviously I can't show the whole image, people have done some anatomical analysis on it in order to understand the inner workings of Chris Chan's creative mind.
Oh my god, he
doesn't know where Chris meant with the caption, because usually when doing trash talk, the target tends to be people's mom, not their sister. Discussions ensued as to what this actually meant to Chris, with some even thinking that the girl in the drawing was Crystal, his imaginary sister slash daughter slash girlfriend. Little did they know that Chris, at least at the time he wrote the caption, believed John, Megan's brother, was the mastermind behind the trolling, and the caption was meant for him. The girl in the drawing was Megan, but no one knew this other than Chris. The rest of that year's edits of the ED page were uneventful back and forth between Chris and the site's moderation. Over in Chris's emails on December 30th, he wrote and sent a poem that's quite the mouthful to say the least. "For my true love, I'd treat her tenderly, sweetly, gently, like a summer breeze.
Oh my god, why is it?
Skin gently with my strong fingers. I'd take her to eat and provide for her to my ability. I'd start small at McDonald's, then let it get better in due time. When the mood is right, I'd whisk her in my arms and lift her up in sweet gentleness. If she is willing to allow the pleasure, I'd lay her down, caress her gently, tickle her fancy, have her tickle my fancy, and give it to her with the learned, lonely experience I've endured." I have no idea how Chris's post-McDonald's erotica is more articulate than the writing of SonicChu. It's insane to think he thought this would be romantic for a woman to read. By the way, he didn't send this directly to Megan, but to a mutual acquaintance of theirs, who presumably read it before passing it on to Megan. It's unknown if it actually
sounds like a fucking
her,
sex
as
offender.
No email of hers acknowledging any of the stuff said in the poem. For the first 2 months of 2008, there was a great quiet before the storm. That is, besides Chris getting some anal beads that came with another one of his purchases.
You're quiet. You haven't said much.
Issues with her family. Given his reputation for touchiness, I'm sure she tried to find there as short as possible. They're uneasy, but not quite all negative relationships.
It's a reaction video on it.
Emailed Chris thanking him for a
I'm sorry, I am
just him over being banned from his local church, which later we find out
he got banned from a local church
about his ED page. The tune suddenly changes to a very different one come the 12th, when Chris emails her profusely apologizing, saying he was caught up in the rage when he did that, followed by a string of, "Megan, I'm sorry for hurting you." It's worth noting he doesn't specify what he's apologizing for exactly. This may seem like a random thing, but it's actually because in their communications outside of emails, Chris was trying to pretend that the drawing wasn't Megan, but Crystal, as the trolls had supposed. At the time of sending this email, he hadn't quite let go of that lie, hence the vague language he uses. He also promises to take the ED page down, or his name isn't Christian Weston Chandler, which is interesting considering it used to be Christopher and eventually would become Christine, but that's for later.
Wait, they had a sex change. Okay.
Quote, detective work on this 4chan fella that's been ruining his life. In this one, he does specify
I'm just gonna say
that he was the one that made the drawing, giving up trying to dodge that particular bullet. On the same day,
I didn't know. I was just following what the channel was saying.
I just don't know what to say now. I'm very much scared by that image, and it will never leave me. And I can't
no
decide
disrespect
what's
to
worse,
this
the image
weirdo.
in general, or the fact you intentionally drew it and gave it to the webmaster for that site that you hate so much. Not only have you poured gas on the fire by doing that, adding obscenities to the already horrific site, but you've also embarrassed and humiliated me and degraded and demeaned me, whether you realize it or not. I mean, I'm not that kind of girl, and you know what? So why? And you also lied to me about it. So I'm unsure what to do about this. I can't say I really think of you the same way anymore. I'm sorry to say. I will continue to give the remaining items for the Zune, and that will be all the contact you will have with me unless I decide otherwise. I hope you understand. So we'll let time decide how I feel about this current situation. Until then, please don't come up to me anymore unless it's to give you what I owe, which seems kind of awkward now. I know how it feels to be alone, but I can't keep throwing away my pride little by little just to keep you satisfied, you know what I mean? There has to be an enough is enough at some point, and I cannot continue to disgrace myself by forgiving things that I never find forgivable in the first place. I'd like for you to just completely leave me alone for a while.
I've known this, but still hearing it again,
it's not
it's
like
just...
I hate you, but I don't see you in the same way anymore. So just leave me be for a while. Let me try to recuperate with my few other friends.
How much of this
and
do we have
maybe
left?
Can just start from scratch sometime. Despite this message having a much more final perspective on Chris and Megan's relationship,
it's bad that we're still the part that I don't know about still.
She still leaves a window open for possible reconciliation in the future. Chris, in his all-enduring grace,
we may have to turn this one into a few parts.
Ties with him is an opportunity to cork out the gnarliest
gigantic
turd on it. Here's what he replied.
Yeah,
I understand.
We're gonna stop here, guys.
Exposure to sexual images as I've.
We will continue. Let's see. It's 1:03 in the video, and we'll call this part Chris and Megan, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a good. Cause you look like you're hurting from watching this.
I am.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. We will see you again next time. Please like, subscribe, all that jazz. If you want to see us on our separate channels, if you want to watch us live, it's at twitch.tv/GodfatherCMB, and you got twitch.tv/YasaiVA.
The fox.
Oh, sorry, Yasai the fox. See, Chris Chan, you can't get a girl like this. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Please don't harass women. It's not okay. Bye-bye.